Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Today's Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. So we finally got through January, and now we are ready for a big month of February. One large football game coming up in less than 2 weeks between the Bengals and the Rams, Super Bowl 56. We'll talk about that with Alex Smart coming up in just a few moments. Also, we'll hit on some NBA and college for tonight. First, I want to say about BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. They are live in Louisiana right now. And BetMGM offers a welcome bonus for casino and sportsbook new users. Enter the bonus code VIBONUS for a $25 no deposit free casino game, plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VIBONUS on the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. BetMGM now live in Louisiana as well as New York, among other states. For more information, go to BetMGM.com. They are the king of sportsbooks. All right, let's get it started. It's a Hoodie Tuesday with Alex Smart, so we are ready to go. And Alex has had a terrific NFL season coming off of the two games on Sunday. And first, want to get your thoughts on both those games before we look at the Super Bowl, Alex. Let's begin with that Bengals-Chiefs game. And Cincinnati ends up beating Kansas City 27-24 in overtime, a game that looked like the Bengals were done, down 21-3, but then they slowly come back, and then the Bengals get the victory. What were your thoughts seeing how, A, Cincinnati came back, and I guess, B, how Kansas City melted down?
Well, me looking at that game right off the bat, I thought to myself, this Joe Burrow is the real deal. I mean, it's obvious now. I mean, after the fact. But this kid is not intimidated, and under the limelight of a big game like this, I mean, he was cold as ice, and you could see it the entire game. On the other hand, Mahomes, who's supposed to be a money quarterback, or I think in the minds of the public is a money quarterback, is showing consistently that he's not a money quarterback anymore. And those are the two things, the most important things I took myself from that game.
Now, you are 7-2 in the playoffs on Vegas Insider. Great job. I mean, it's unbelievable. You're doing fantastic. You had the under in that Bengals-Chiefs game, as did I. And watching it, I'm saying, as the game is going to overtime, Alex, I'm sure you thought the same thing. The Chiefs just don't kick a field goal on the first possession. All you needed was the 3 there, then the 3 with the Bengals, or a touchdown by them to screw this whole thing up. What were your thoughts watching the end of it? Because it looked like it was on a good pace. Obviously, the no score at the end of the first half was key that the Chiefs didn't get in. But what were your thoughts going into overtime, seeing that total, thinking, all right, we got this, but just not yet?
Well, I remember you and I were on the same side of that Tom Brady overtime win with Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. And that was, I'm not sure, but I remember we were talking about that game. That's the same thing that came to mind. I said, here we go again. And fortunately this time it rolled our way.
So the Bengals end up advancing to the Super Bowl. They're facing the Rams. You took San Francisco on Sunday plus the 3.5. That was the first time in the postseason, Alex, that we have seen an underdog cover in a loss. And San Francisco's up 17-7. A lot of people killing Kyle Shanahan and Garoppolo for them blowing that game. But what did you see there with the Rams making that comeback, that they were still kind of hanging in that game? It felt like the Niners never really pulled away in that game.
No, it's there's, it's sort of, I guess in some ways, not exactly, but it reminds me of the Super Bowl that the Niners sort of fell apart in here a couple of years back. And I don't know where this franchise is going. Garoppolo is obviously a top-tier quarterback. We have a very strong team. I mean, they're a smash-mouth team, and all the respect to them, and all the respect to the Rams, I mean, for pulling it out somehow. And that's the sign of a winning team that deserves to be in a Super Bowl. And that's all I can say about that. From there are probably a lot more thoughts I have about that we can't discuss out here online. But I'll tell you, that was quite a game.
Yeah, and the Rams, great job coming back. So now they're playing in the Super Bowl in their home stadium, even though, granted, they are technically the visiting team, but it's still their home stadium. So the number now, it's actually crept up to 4.5. It opened at 3.5. I'm not going to ask for your pick now, but at least what did you think when you saw the line drop on Sunday night? we all knew the Rams would be favored. But as far as the line movement and that goes, and the total has dropped a little bit. What have you thought about that?
Well, there's so much public money rushing in here, and being able to estimate, between what's sharp money and just whale money. I mean, those are very difficult processes to go through in one big game. But looking at this very quickly, you can tell, and my consensus from speaking to people who are in this game like us, it seems like there's a split down the middle between who they think is going to cover here. And line movement, I don't think, is a perfect indication of that, but there is obviously a lot of respect going towards which is the home team, which is actually the Rams, really. Yeah.
Do you think the points will matter in this game? That if you were to take Cincinnati, you'd say, okay, I think the Bengals can win, but I'll take the insurance of the 4.5, or the Rams win this, they're going to win this one going away?
Well, I think this is a logistics thing, it's almost technical in some points. The math behind it would say, it all depends how we want to do this. Okay, from a historical standpoint, we know that the favorites have a way of just clobbering their way to easy wins. Historically, it doesn't always happen, but from a historical standpoint, from a more technical standpoint, and from maybe an advantage players look at this, it would be a good idea to sprinkle a little bit of money on the money line and go with the underdog at that point, if that's where you're so inclined. But so many questions, so many answers here to go. I don't know if I could properly answer it for everybody.
The last time, Alex, that we had an underdog that covered in a loss in the Super Bowl was Super Bowl, let me do my math here, 43. That was Pittsburgh, Arizona, back in 2009. That the famous game of Ben Roethlisberger hitting Santonio Holmes in the back of the end zone. Since then, we have seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 underdogs win outright. So 7 underdogs winning, points don't matter. So that's where you always kind of wonder, are you going to take Cincinnati because you think they're going to cover, or you think they're going to win outright?
Right. Yeah. And you're saying one or the other. I personally would actually split my bet, but that, if I was so inclined to go that way. But, a lot of people in this one kind of big game, I mean, there's, you've heard this discussion before, Kevin, so many ways to skin a cat. And that's where we're at now. And where are you so inclined to do so? From a mathematical standpoint, I would definitely say, if you think it's Cincinnati, I would personally just go with the cover. But, it's up to whoever wants to mess around with that.
What about the total? We've seen the total drop. It opened at 50. Now it's down to 48.5. 3 straight Super Bowls have finished under the total, but also those totals were higher. And we've seen what Cincinnati's defense has done so far in the playoffs. They shut down Mahomes in the second half. Rams still pretty good defensively. Are you buying into that line movement with the under dropping?
Yeah, I'm not really buying into it 100% here. And I think at this point, I'm nowhere near projecting what this total will be. And one of the reasons I have a problem with that is Cincinnati all season long has had this issue about, falling behind and coming back and having a better second quarter, or giving up big leads. And in that kind of situation, like we saw last week, you have to take into consideration late scores and overtime even. And I find it's just really too much of a gamble. I prefer at this point to look at, like we discussed earlier, the money line or the side, personally, from my point of view.
Are you going to keep your eye later this week at any props? Are you a big prop player? Or are you going to get involved in that game?
I'm not a big prop player, but when, there are advantages, as we're going to take advantage of it. Anything, I've got an old saying, if it moves, I'll hit it. But, it's got to be moving in my direction at least, right? I've got to be able to have good aim. So that's what we're looking at.
Now, I want to transition off football. We have plenty of other things going on, NBA, college basketball, to take up our time with only one football game remaining in the season. I'm not counting the Pro Bowl either. And the Nets and the Suns tonight in Phoenix. That's one of the 2 nationally televised games. And Brooklyn, Alex, they were without James Harden the last few games. James Harden said he was going to play at Golden State, and then all of a sudden he didn't play. Kyrie played in that game. Durant's still out. But the Nets here are getting 5.5, continuing their road trip in Phoenix, and the Suns have obviously been terrific this year. Any thoughts on this late-night game in the Valley between the Suns and the Nets?
Yeah, there's some guys missing here. Aton's going to be out. Harden's questionable, like we said. Durant is definitely not going to be around, and Irving's going to be playing tonight. So you try to go through the lineup and you try to do a projection based on the style of play both teams play, and where all the key players sort of match up. And I'll tell you right off the bat, no matter what, Phoenix is a top tier team. They've proven themselves over and over again. It seems they come to play when they're challenged, and laying 6 points here with the Suns, I think is not out of the question. Brooklyn's a top tier team, don't get me wrong, but I think the Suns always have to be looked at. Anything around that type of line, a 6 or less, as a quality bet. So.
And also, Brooklyn's lost 4 straight. These seasons get very long, so you kind of lose track of these streaks. But Phoenix, Alex, they're 40-9, and they began the season, again, 82-game season. You could start 0-3. It's not the end of the world. But they lose that 2-0 lead to Milwaukee in the NBA Finals last year. And then you come into this season and think, okay, they struggled a bit out of the gate. Oh, well, okay, maybe Phoenix isn't one of the top teams in the West. They were a one-hit wonder. But 40-9, that is extremely impressive what they've done, that they still are a threat to make it back to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and this is like I said, a top tier team. They've won 11 in a row now, if I'm not mistaken, 10 in a row. But this team is explosive on every level. They're deep, they're well conditioned, which is very important. They have chemistry. They have all the chips except, of course, a championship ring, and the experience that they brought last year is very important. The only thing that concerns me with Phoenix at this point is when you're playing at this kind of level day in, day out against a lot of top tier competition as well, playing back-to-backs against Utah here this past weekend or towards the end of last week. It makes me wonder, I know they're well conditioned, but are they going to run out of gas at some point? We have to really pay attention because the lines will skew in our favor at some point. That's the way I feel about them right now.
Yeah, 10 straight wins now for Phoenix, and best record in the NBA. They're a few games ahead of Golden State for the number 1 spot in the West. All right, one college game to look at, the Big 12 tonight, Alex. Kansas and Iowa State, and the Jayhawks off of a rough effort against Kentucky at home on Saturday, losing by 18, 80-62 to the Wildcats. Kansas now 0-4 against the spread the last 4. Iowa State, they played a little better. They're a great story. They won 2 games last year. They started out of the gate really hot. They beat Iowa at home convincingly, struggled a bit during Big 12 play, off back-to-back wins at Oklahoma State, beating Missouri, who's not great. But then again, Missouri in the SEC now. We always thought of Iowa State and Missouri as Big 12 rivals. But as far as Kansas, they beat Iowa State by 1 at home last month, laying 13.5. Now they're laying 4.5. You would think in a focus spot for Bill Self's team. But do you agree with that?
I think that would be the public's opinion at this point, or a general opinion. The way I look at this game, it's not easy to have your ego sort of handed to you. And Kentucky really, really, I think, made this Kansas team really think about maybe how good they really are. Ego has a lot to do with these kids. When you bruise their ego, they don't bounce back like a pro. I know there's some top caliber players there, but they're not pros yet. And I think a lot of people might be looking at this. Okay, well, Kansas is going to come flying back, and they're just going to pound the living crap out of Iowa State. But while that's a possibility, it's also a possibility they may start very slowly here, and things may not go the way they want them, especially if there's any issues about cohesiveness and their shooting prowess as the game goes along.
And also, too, Alex, when you look at Kansas, they beat Texas Tech by 3. They came back at Kansas State, won by 3. At Oklahoma, won by 3. Beat Iowa State by 1. I mean, they've lived on the edge for a while, and Bill Self still is a talented team. Like, I'm not going to take away from – they're 17-3, but, man, they've had a lot of close shaves so far that have gone their way, a lot of games they've not covered. So You can even see Iowa State in this one hanging around, and Kansas wins another close game it doesn't cover.
Yeah, absolutely. From a league-wide trend standpoint, and I like to look at these trends every now and then. I use them as a basis for some of my selections. It's interesting to note that road teams, as a favorite or a pick 'em, a top caliber team like Kansas, that's been outscoring their opponents by 12 or more points a game after trailing their previous game at the half by more than 20 points. And I mean, they were getting absolutely blasted. Have a way of coming out flat the next time around. Maybe they're being overestimated from lines maker's perspective, but they're only 5-24, and that's dating back close to 25 seasons. And that's an 83% go against conversion rate. Now, I mean, every game has to be looked at in a different way, but I'm just saying from a league-wide trends perspective. So it's interesting to note.
Yeah, and you know what? Listen, Alex, I know what you just said a few moments ago, that the expectation of the public is Kansas has to come back. They just lost to Kentucky. Like, they have to come back in this game. But also for Iowa State, who is still an up-and-coming team, getting squeezed at Kansas earlier, everyone's going to circle Kansas on their calendar. Kentucky circled Kansas. Kentucky is an elite team. They circled Kansas on their calendar. So Iowa State is going to be motivated tonight. By the way, too, just throw this one out. Kansas this weekend, they host Baylor. Then they go to Texas for Big Monday.
That's right.
Those are big games. And I'm not saying Iowa State's not a big game, but Kentucky, Baylor, Texas, Iowa State in the middle of that on the road.
Yeah. You got to be careful with this game. That's the way I'm looking at it. Very interesting game, though. If Bill Self and company come back here and show us something, then that's something we can use at a later date to make some money on. And maybe not. Maybe tonight's a better night to watch. But I'll leave that to the individual anyway.
Alex Smart, he has been on fire in the NFL. Unfortunately, he's got to wait about 2 weeks until the next selection. But still, Alex has been great in the NFL so far in the postseason. And you can check out his selections for Super Bowl 56 coming up in less than 2 weeks. Also, college basketball, he's been great. NBA as well. You can find his picks on Vegas Insider for all those sports. Alex, thank you so much for the time as always. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Kevin. Take care. Bye.
All right, you too. There is Alex Smart, and he's been great in the NFL this postseason. He had both of his picks on Sunday, the under in the AFC Championship. He had the points with the Niners in the NFC Championship, and we'll see what he's got in store for the Super Bowl coming up in just and still 2 weeks. That's the one thing about the Super Bowl we got to deal with is the sitting and waiting. We know the matchup. You want the game to happen Sunday, but we got to wait another week. But we know they got to get all their festivities in throughout. They just can't travel that quickly. You know who travels well? That guy, the GOAT. He's wearing the crown. He made his way to New York when DraftKings was open in New York, which it still is. But now DraftKings is open in Louisiana. And the GOAT, he doesn't need a hitchhike. He's going to go down there. He's going to take his time because he wears that crown proudly. He may go to New Orleans. He may go to Shreveport. He may go to Baton Rouge. Who knows where he'll go in Louisiana. But DraftKings is now legal in the state of Louisiana. You could be the GOAT just like him. Score your seat to the Tournament of Champions. The DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right. You know what? I think he even had his money on Tulane the other day in their win over Wichita State. He's like, I'm going to take Ron Hunter. I'm going to take the Green Wave because I'm here in Louisiana, and I'm going to go with DraftKings, and that's what he did. You could be the GOAT too. Just check it out right now at DraftKings.com. All right. Let's look at some NBA now for tonight. And we'll begin with a monster matchup in Detroit, the Pelicans and the Pistons. So Brandon Ingram is still sidelined for New Orleans, and you see how much that's hurt them. Now, number one, the Pelicans did cover in last night's 93-90 loss at Cleveland. They were getting 4.5. 3 straight unders for the Pelicans. Ingram's still out. They scored 90 at Cleveland, 97 against Boston. So the offense has hit, obviously, a snag without him. That's not really a shocker. So they go to Detroit tonight to face the Pistons, who have covered now 5 of 6 They have not been a favorite since early January against Orlando. So you're getting the Pistons as a rare favorite here. But they've hit the over in back-to-back games. They rallied past the Cavs 115-105. They got blown out at Orlando. But listen to what they've given up recently, Detroit. 105, 119, 110, 117, 111, 131. And that's in the last 6 games. So defensively, Detroit's had some lapses. And this total at 214.5, edging towards 215 in some places. But keep an eye on that. Pistons and the Pelicans. New Orleans beat them at home earlier this season. The Wizards and the Bucks meet up in Milwaukee. That's the first TNT game tonight. No Bradley Beal for the Wizards. And Washington has just been a complete disaster of late. 23-26. They have dropped now 5 in a row. They had that meltdown against the Clippers, leading by 35, had a 30-point halftime lead, lost at the end, 116-115. They were routed by Memphis on Saturday, 115-95, and they are 1-9 against the spread their last 10 games. And in the games without Bradley Beal, since he's out tonight, they missed him in that Portland game. They were laying 7. And they lost outright to the Blazers. They're laying 6.5 to Orlando, won by 6. So Washington just has not been good against the spread. Now, Milwaukee, coming off a 36-point loss at home to Denver. If you missed that on Sunday, they were laying 6.5, and just Denver boat raced them in that one. The Nuggets have dropped 2 of their past 3. They're 1-4 against the spread their last 5. And Washington beat Milwaukee at home earlier this year, 101-94. Game stayed under the total of 220. The Saints total is at 227.5. And again, no Bradley Beal for the Wizards. The Heat and the Raptors, they just played on Saturday. They'd still be playing if it wasn't for that triple overtime game that Toronto won. And then the Raptors went into Atlanta last night, and they beat the Hawks 106-100. Granted, Trae Young didn't play for Atlanta, but the Raptors now have won 3 of 4. So Toronto's has been so inconsistent this year, 25-23. The Heat play with no rest as well, lost by 30 at Boston, 122-92. So both these teams playing with no rest. This was a game that was rescheduled with all the COVID stuff because Toronto-Atlanta should have been tonight, but the Heat and the Raptors are playing tonight. Toronto played Atlanta last night, so a lot of movement. But the Heat, they are 7-1 to the over with no rest this year. Toronto 5-3 to the under with no rest. And again, these teams just played on Saturday night in Miami. Raptors won 124-120. Game went over the total of 211.5. But to be fair, it was 100-100 going to overtime. So remember, when you look at final scores, game goes to overtime. Take out the overtime part and see what they did in the 4 quarters. Just so you know, if you have a crazy overtime, it's going to skew things. But the Raptors were up 10 going to the 4th. Heat outscored them by 10 to force overtime. They went back and forth in the overtimes, and then Toronto ended up winning 124-100, and the Raptors laying 2.5 here tonight at home. The Magic and the Bulls, Orlando just blew out Chicago in the last week, 114-95, that game in Orlando. And you know what? The Magic, break them up. They've won 3 of 4. They're 11-40. They got a long way to go, but at least they're playing a little bit better. Just beat Dallas. That's a good win for them at home. And also, well, beat Detroit. They were favored in that game. But beating Dallas and Chicago as a home dog, that's a good job by them. Chicago's won 3 of 4. They blew out Portland on Sunday, 130-116. And they were laying 5 in that one. The Bulls have seen the over hit in 3 of 4 games. They have split both matchups with the Magic this year, where Orlando has covered both of them, getting 3.5 at home, getting 13.5 on the road. And that both those games stayed under the total. And it's the highest total out of the 3. You had a 218 and a 215.5. Now you're at 222.5. Denver and Minnesota, they meet at Target Center tonight, and Denver has been on fire. They have won 5 straight. They're 4-0 in their current road trip. Minnesota tonight, then Utah tomorrow. So that's never easy, even though Utah's all beat up. They got so many problems, the Jazz right now. But Denver, who took care of Milwaukee 136-100 on Sunday night. That was a game in which Denver hit 23 of 43 three-point attempts and shot 60% from the floor. So they were getting contributions everywhere. Aaron Gordon had 24. Nikola Jokic only had 18 in that game. He had 15 assists. Unbelievable. The Timberwolves, they snapped a two-game skid. They beat Utah 126-106 on Saturday. And Minnesota continues to play better at home. Now 14-10. And in the last three home wins, double-digit victories over Utah, Brooklyn, and Golden State. And unfortunately, I don't want to get on the Timberwolves because they're a very good story. But, I mean, look, they did beat Brooklyn with James Harden, Kyrie Irving in the lineup. Durant's been out. Golden State, Steph Curry didn't play in that game. But Timberwolves haven't lost at home since late December. And just to get the number, since December 17th when they beat the Lakers, let's see, 7-1 the last 8 at home for Minnesota. So pretty good job by the Timberwolves, at least playing at Target Center and developing some kind of home court advantage. The two teams have split a pair of meetings this year. Denver won at Minnesota 93-91 back in late October. Timberwolves won in Denver 124-107 in mid-December. 2 games left to look at in the NBA. Warriors, they won at Houston last night, so they make the short trip to San Antonio tonight. Warriors 38-13, Spurs at 19-32. Last time they played in San Francisco, that was that famous game in which the game should have clearly gone over the total of 219. The two teams combined for 32 points in the fourth quarter. And San Antonio won 112-107. That was back in early December. San Antonio was getting 9. And San Antonio was up 15 after 1. They were in cruise control. Warriors came back and made it interesting. That was the game Steph Curry, 5 of 17 from 3 and 7 of 28 from the floor. So something to consider there. But Golden State, though, they are on a 6-game winning streak. San Antonio, they have been not good as a home underdog. They've given up a ton of points. Now, we don't count the Chicago game because they flipped to a favorite in that one. They beat Chicago 131-122 last week before they lost at Phoenix, getting 13.5, 115-110. So San Antonio 3-1 against the spread in the last 4 games. Now, the last game we'll look at from the NBA tonight, the Nets and the Suns in Phoenix. And Phoenix won at Brooklyn earlier this season by a 113-107 count. And Brooklyn was down early, just no shot. Devin Booker at 30 in that game. Kevin Durant did score 39 in that game. James Harden had a very interesting stat line. 12 points, 13 rebounds, 14 assists, was 0 of 6 from 3 and 4 of 15 from the floor. So take what you can get, I guess. But the Nets have lost 4 in a row. Phoenix has won 10 straight. And the Nets actually hung with the Warriors back on Saturday. Kyrie was the only part of the big three that played because James Harden didn't end up playing, and Harden's still a question mark for tonight. Kyrie's going to play tonight because the game's on the road. Texas A&M is at Tennessee in college basketball. And we'll take a look at a few college games tonight. Let's start with Tennessee. Rick Barnes made his return to Texas the other night. First time since that split, and Rick Barnes was great for the University of Texas. But he found his way at Tennessee, and he's made Tennessee into a legitimate SEC contender year in, year out. But that loss to Texas snapped a 3-game winning streak. Now they got Texas A&M tonight. A&M has dropped 4 in a row. However, the Aggies 4-0 against the spread as an underdog in SEC play. They've covered in losses at LSU, at Arkansas, and at Kentucky. So they have not won those games. Didn't beat Arkansas also as a home dog. But Texas A&M, they were run out in the second half by South Carolina on Saturday in one of the non-Big 12 SEC Challenge games. But A&M lost to South Carolina 73-64. So now the Aggies have dropped 4 in a row. Tennessee laying 10.5 here tonight against Texas A&M. We told you about Kansas, Iowa State. We were talking about that with Alex Smart. And what is just very interesting, and I'll bring this up again, that Kansas just got blown out by Kentucky, lost by 18 at home. They get Baylor Saturday, and then at Texas next Monday. You go to Iowa State here, a team that had you on the ropes last time around in Lawrence, and Kansas won that game by 62-61. It's 13.5-point favorites back on January 11th. Iowa State off back-to-back wins. So you get Kansas at Texas and even West Virginia, who almost beat Baylor last night, but the Mountaineers have struggled. Got a couple big road games up ahead, but Iowa State at home, they've beaten Texas, and they covered against Baylor. So they have a couple home underdog covers in Big 12 play. Now you wonder if they could do it again against a Kansas team. Will be very interested to see how they come out tonight. North Carolina and Louisville in the ACC. UNC has Duke coming up Saturday. Put that out there. And North Carolina's caught fire of late after they had a couple bad blowout losses at Miami and at Wake Forest. They've won 3 straight, beating Virginia Tech, Boston College, and NC State at home, all by double digits. Now you get Louisville. Chris Mack is gone. Louisville's had all these internal issues. They've lost 6 of 7. They've lost 3 in a row. They were hanging around with Duke for a little bit on Saturday, but then ended up losing that game 74-65 to the Blue Devils. And the last few losses by 9 to Duke, by 12 to Virginia, by 12 to Notre Dame, by 12 to Pittsburgh, by 16 to NC State, by 9 to Florida State. So they really have not been that close in a lot of these losses. The only win in this span coming against Boston College. So that's not really saying much, but you just wonder when Louisville is going to bounce back here and somewhat get on track. The final game we'll look at, Texas and Texas Tech. And we just talked about Texas, their win over Tennessee. Chris Beard makes his return to Lubbock tonight. And Chris Beard, who, yes, there's a lot of things you can say about him going from not only one Big 12 school to another, but also to, in a sense, a rival of Texas Tech. Chris Beard worked at Texas earlier in his career. So he has that where it's going to, I mean, look, no disrespect to the Red Raiders, but Texas, better job. You're going to the SEC in a couple of years. You have your own television network. Like, let's not blame the guy. And also, Chris Beard helped take Texas Tech from mediocrity to the national championship game where they lost to Virginia in overtime. And Texas Tech year in and year out was pretty good. So the fans should not be getting on this guy for leaving for greener pastures. Both teams are 16-5. Longhorns have won 3 straight. The Red Raiders, they're off this blowout of Mississippi State on Saturday. They've won 3 of 4. And also Texas Tech, they are 8-1 against the spread. Their last 9, the only loss came at Kansas State as a favorite. So now Texas Tech gets Texas tonight. Huge game. And these teams haven't met yet this year. But the Red Raiders laying 4.5 to the Longhorns tonight. And that should be a pretty interesting crowd and to see how they treat Chris Beard. Not say you should boot Texas during the game, but at least initially, like, the guy made you relevant. So don't exactly get on him for taking the Texas job. I mean, who wouldn't take the Texas job? There's a lot of pressure there, but still. BetMGM, they are the king of sports books. They are now live in Louisiana, among other states, New York, as well as Arizona, New Jersey, Tennessee, West Virginia, Mississippi, Washington, D.C., Indiana, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Illinois, and Wyoming. And the cool thing about BetMGM, they have a great welcome bonus for casino and sportsbook new users. Enter the bonus code VIBONUS for a $25 no deposit free casino game, plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VI bonus in the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sportsbooks. My thanks again to Alex Smart for joining us here. He's been on fire in the NFL, and you can find his picks at Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. We appreciate you tuning into the Daily Insider. Also, we'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. It'd be greatly appreciated. And we'll be back with you tomorrow at noon Eastern for another edition of the Daily Insider right here on our Vegas Insider channel on YouTube. And as always, best of luck with your bets.